been utter rubbish.
And their next fixture was a jolly important local match
Against their bitter rivals, Codford St. excuse me, St. Rupert.
So the captain decides to put an advert
in the window of the local shop.
That's person wanted.
Well, a month goes by and he's heard nothing.
and the captain's getting into a bit of a tizzy.
When, out of the blue, there's a knock at his door.
And in walks a dirty great horse.
Horse!
I understand you're looking for some new blood,
said the horse. And the captain's gobsmacked.
But you're a horse!
I know, replied the horse.
But actually, I'm really rather nifty with the old Willie. Why not give me a go?
Well, what did the captain have to lose?
So, that Sunday,
the whole village turns out to support their team, which was nice.
Needless to say,
Their performance is as dismal as usual.
With only 2 overs remaining, they need
37 runs.
To avoid another humiliating defeat.
When from the pavilion,
Sachet's the new number 11 batsman. Nice.
but unfortunately for him, Big Bernard Armstrong, the village bear,
blacksmith is next to bowl.
And he sets off on his run-up.
and hurls down a vicious delivery.
And the horse thumps it right out the ground.
And the next 5 deliveries?
Six!
1 over left and only 1 run needed.
To seal
An historic cricketing victory.
The crowd is now on tenterhooks. Because, facing the bowling,
Is young Cuthbert O'Toole.
A right little weed.
How he survived the first 5 balls.
nobody knows.
but he survives.
And as the final ball is bowled,
He shuts his eyes and
Swings with all his might. And just clips the ball with a fluky thick edge.
And O'Toole sets off up the wicket for his winning run.
But to his horror, the horse doesn't move.
O'Toole shouts, "Run!" But still the horse doesn't move.
and from the pavilion the captain bellows.
Run! Run!
Yet still the horse doesn't move.
and the crowd lining the pitch scream,
Run!
And the horse looks up.
Raises an eyebrow and says,
Me? Run?
Do me a favour.
If I could run, I'd be at Haydock Ruddy Park.
It's a bad one, isn't it? It's a steamer. It's a stinker.
The BBC have always attempted to make you laugh, and will continue to do so whether you like it or not.
Run, run, run like the wind.
Angus Deaton remembers the stars before they were famous in 40 minutes, including David Jason, Ainsley Harriott and Angus Deaton. First on BBC1, it's winter in Dibley. One of the Geraldines gets christened and the other gets a proposal at 9 o'clock on Bank Holiday Monday night. Next tonight on BBC1, from EastEnders to Friends, we've got them all before they were famous.
This is your mission should you choose to accept it.
We're being ambushed for port. That's an order.
They knew we were coming. Do you read me?
I want to know why he did it. These guys are trained to be ghosts. Find something that's personally important to him and you squeeze.
Tom Cruise.
I can understand you're very upset. You've never seen me very upset.
Mission Impossible. Boxing Day at 9 on BBC1.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Now on BBC1, they all had to start somewhere.
Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Before They Were Famous. Special because it's the only show on the planet right now without the word millennium in its title.
Well, Christmas is a time for the family and the royal family here on BBC One in 10 minutes after the news, which is next.
If you think you can go one better than George Clooney in a Gold Lame bikini, please contact us at Before They Were Famous, room 5025, BBC Television Centre, Wood Lane, W12 7RJ. Or email us at famous@bbc.co.uk.
All the contents for a perfect Boxing Day on BBC One. At 5:25, a Christmas Vets in Practice, followed by Rolf and the team with Animal Hospital.
We find out what reindeer do on the 364 days a year that they're not delivering Santa's presents.
Continue the journey of a lifetime at 6:25.
You must forget her, Mr. Copperfield.
You can't be considering marriage to that reptile.
It's anything but peace on Earth in Casualty at 8.
It's all my fault. Useless.
Then at 9, Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
They knew we were coming. These guys are trained to be ghosts.
Boxing Day from 5:25 on BBC One, where everything's possible.
The BBC News for Christmas Day, now on BBC One, with George Alagaya.
Russia launches a Christmas Day bombardment on Chechnya's capital. The shells rain down on Grozny in what may be Russia's final assault. Hijackers free some Indian Airlines passengers but make a series of demands. And a message for a new millennium, the Queen offers reassurance in these changing times. Good evening.
The BBC News for Christmas Day, now on BBC One, with George Alagaya.
Russia launches a Christmas Day bombardment on Chechnya's capital. The shells rain down on Grozny in what may be Russia's final assault. Hijackers free some Indian Airlines passengers but make a series of demands. And a message for a new millennium, the Queen offers reassurance in these changing times. Good evening. Russia has launched what appears to be its final assault on the Chechen capital Grozny. Armoured columns are said to be advancing on the city, with Russian forces attacking on 4 fronts. Tens of thousands of civilians are trapped in Grozny as fighting rages all around. Our correspondent Jonathan Charles sent this report from Chechnya.
The long-awaited assault is underway. Grozny was pounded by artillery in the hours before the attack. The Russians attempting to soften up the Chechen capital's defences. As the Russian armour moved in, the artillery kept up its barrage. Shells smashed into buildings in the city centre. Now Russian infantry will have to take Grozny street by street, a daunting task. Many of the soldiers have painted identification signs on their uniforms, making sure they can be recognised by their own side amidst the confusion of war. This soldier says we're going to Grozny, but behind the smiles, the young conscripts are nervous. In Grozny, as many as 40,000 civilians face a terrible few weeks. After months of hiding in cellars to avoid all the shelling, they'll now have to cope with fighting right outside their homes. The well-armed Chechen Islamic rebels who are demanding independence will put up stiff resistance. Even though they're outnumbered, they have the advantage of knowing the layout of the capital much better than their attackers. The Russian offensive against a heavily populated city will raise more protests from foreign governments. But Russia hopes that on Christmas Day, most people in the West will be too distracted to notice. Senior Russian officers are indicating privately that they've planned a 5-day military operation here. But that looks optimistic. This will be a bloody and costly battle. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Chechnya.
More than 160 passengers are spending their second night on board a hijacked Indian airliner. The plane is on the ground at an airport in southern Afghanistan. The armed hijackers are demanding the release of a Muslim religious leader in prison in India. A group of passengers who were released by the hijackers in Dubai last night have arrived back in India.
There were chaotic scenes in New Delhi tonight as 27 of the hostages arrived home after being freed earlier in Dubai. There was also an outpouring of grief as the body of one of the passengers killed by the hijackers was also returned. That of a 25-year-old businessman whose new bride is still a hostage. They'd been returning from their honeymoon like many others on the plane. But only now, as the Indian Airlines hostage crisis enters its second night, have the hijackers made clear their demands. Chief among them, the release of an Islamic religious leader in jail in India in return for the freedom of the remaining passengers. Their terrifying ordeal began soon after the plane left Kathmandu, with the hijackers threatening to kill passengers unless they were taken to Lahore in Pakistan. The journey included a stop first at Amritsar before going on to Lahore and then to Dubai, where permission was eventually granted to fly to Afghanistan, where tonight another Sikh hostage was also freed. But with reports of 4 more dead passengers, the Indian government is desperate to resolve the crisis without further bloodshed.
The primacy of approach that India has adopted is earliest termination of hijacking and the safe return of passengers, crew and aircraft.
Those freed spoke of everyone being blindfolded and not allowed to speak. For the families of the remaining hostages, it's an agonizing wait for any developments. John McIntyre, BBC News.
In her Christmas message, the Queen has spoken of the anxiety that many people feel about the future. She stressed the importance of tradition and reassured her audience that the timeless values of Christianity and the world's major religions would help provide guidance.
It's one of the largest family parties at Sandringham in recent years. By tradition, the royal family attends morning service on the estate and then gathers to watch the Queen's Christmas message. The broadcast once again breaks new ground. Shown now on worldwide TV news channels, it has potentially bigger international audiences than ever before. And in terms of style, it is ever more relaxed.
A very happy Christmas to you from St. George's Chapel, Windsor.
Its principal theme this year is the millennium.
This December, we are looking back not just 1 year, but on 100 years and 1,000 years.
For the first time, part of the message was recorded in Scotland. The Queen is shown listening to young people in Edinburgh describing their hopes for the future, while she acknowledges the concerns of older people about the scale of change and urges them not to be alarmed by it. She also talks about the changes to the UK's constitutional composition.
Devolution in Scotland and Wales, and more recently, the very welcome progress in Northern Ireland, are responses to today's changed circumstances.
4 generations with experiences from early in the 20th to potentially well into the 21st centuries are seen gathering for a private family photograph.
And did you remember years ago at Sandringham?
But underlying the informality is the Queen's millennium message of Christian reassurance that the future isn't just about new technologies and the latest fashions.
At the centre of all our lives, today and tomorrow, must be the message of caring for others. The message at the heart of Christianity and all the great religions. This message, love thy neighbour as thyself, may be for Christians 2,000 years old, but it is as relevant today as it ever was. I believe it gives us the guidance and the reassurance we need as we step over the threshold into the 21st century. And I, for one, am looking forward to this new millennium.
Thought was given at Buckingham Palace to breaking with tradition this year and broadcasting the Queen's message not on Christmas Day but on New Year's Eve. But in the end it was felt that the most appropriate time for a message with such a strong Christian theme was on Christmas Day itself. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, Buckingham Palace.
Church leaders have been delivering their traditional Christmas addresses. The Archbishop of Canterbury told worshippers that they should not fear the challenges of the new millennium because the Christmas message pointed the way. And at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, the Pope called for a ban on what he called the senseless use of arms. He said hatred had doomed individuals as well as entire nations. Thousands of people in Sussex may have to leave their homes for a second night, as some areas are again threatened by flooding. Emergency teams have spent the day battling against high winds and torrential rain to repair coastal flood defences.
From first light, repair crews were doing their best to shore up sea defences damaged by the largest tides here in living memory. For this family in Chelsea, as for dozens of others, it wasn't enough. Christmas was a washout as they spent the day packing their belongings and moving out of their flooded home. Along the coast at Lymington in Hampshire, it was a similar picture, with families clearing up after a river burst its banks.
The carpets have gone, computers have gone, well, house is in a mess, so Christmas, I think we'll go find a pub if we can.
Throughout the day, the south coast took a further battering, though the damage was not as severe as expected. A change in wind direction last night lessened the impact of the tides. In Wales, this pub in the village of Tintern in Monmouthshire was at one stage immersed in 3 feet of water. With further rain, a growing number of rivers have been put on red flood warnings, and in East Anglia, the weather cut power supplies to several thousand homes. Overnight, the worst of the weather will again be here on the south coast. The Environment Agency warns several thousand homes could still be at risk from flooding at the next high tide in the early hours of the morning. Daniel Bircher, BBC News, Chelsea in Sussex.
And that's all from the newsroom this Christmas Day. Good night.
Good evening. We hope you had a cheerful Christmas despite the flooding, the very strong winds and also the heavy rain. But those are all on the weather menu for the next 24 hours. In fact, we have a severe weather warning out for heavy rain during tonight, moving east across southern England, resulting in further flooding and dangerous driving conditions. Well, we've seen a rash of showers across the country today, and now we're seeing that belt of heavier rain showing its hand in the West Country and parts of Wales. And of course, that's going to pose problems for many rivers in southern Britain. And here's our emergency advice line, also on CFAX. So we're going to see that heavy rain moving swiftly eastwards across southern England, sleet and snow in its northern flank, and also very strong winds gusting up to 60 miles an hour, and also some sleet and snow showers further north, accompanied by freezing temperatures. We're going to have hazardous driving conditions in northern Britain too. Tomorrow we'll see that rain pushing away quickly from the southeast. Elsewhere it'll be bright, but lots of blustery showers around and temperatures around 48. Bye-bye for now.
Join BBC One this New Year's Eve as 2000 Today takes you around the world and into the new millennium.
Right, so who's for half litre? Love a pickled herring.
But at 5:30, will they be cracking open the champagne in Albert Square?
We'll be fine.
I don't want fine, I want it to be perfect. At 7:05.
Join us for the grand final of 2001.
And at 8, it's back to the main question.
What if I'm making a terrible mistake?
At 9:25, Texas and Barbara Windsor join Dale Winter.
You are really spoiling us.
And then join David Attenborough, Michael Burke, the two Ronnies, Vic and Bob, Michael Palin and Lenny Henry as the stars come out across the universe. In Greenwich, Jamie Theakston plays host to the Eurythmics, Simply Red and Martine McCutcheon. And at 12:35, Dale's back. A night like no other.
I don't know what all this fuss is about.
Join BBC One as 2000 Today welcomes you to the new millennium.
They think it's all over in 40 minutes. This is BBC One. So why not spend Christmas in front of the telly? The royal family return to BBC One next year.
El campeón por excelencia de la Copa de Europa.
راجع كازابلانكا أبطال أندية القارة الإفريقية. النصر أبطال كأس الكؤوس. نحن عروس آسيا.
The best team from a country that knows loads about beating the world, mate.
Campeões da América estão onde se faz o futebol mais bonito.
And they're all coming face to face with the biggest club in the world.
Manchester United in the World Club Championship, live from Brazil this January on BBC One, BBC Choice and Radio 5 Live.
Planning the biggest traffic jam in history so that $4 million can fall off the back of a lorry. The Michael Caine season continues with The Italian Job at 10 to midnight. And that's here on BBC One.
Could be run out.
Oh, I see.
So, Gary's team are the series winner. Well done.
You could have made me look good there.
So our thanks to David, Jonathan and David, Gary, Rory and Claire. We're all off to give Paul Hull a big bunch of mistletoe. My name's Nick Hancock. They think it's all over. It is now.
I'd like to tell you, if I may, a gripping tale of sporting achievement.
Last Sunday was the Jungle Cup final.
The insects versus the mammals.
Sadly, the mammals were just too strong for the poor insects.
By half-time, the insects were 13-0 down.
Back in the insect dressing room.
The manager did his best to pick up his downhearted troops.
And sent them back out to resume battle.
Well, alas, the second half
was just as one-sided as the first.
And with 5 minutes to go, the score was an embarrassing 24-0.
When the insect manager
pulls off an earwig and brings on a millipede.
Anyway, this millipede's brilliant and he starts banging in goals from all over the pitch.
By the final whistle, it scored
25 goals.
And the insects win the cup.
25-24.
And after the match, John Motson asks the manager,
how come you didn't play him from the start?
And the manager replies, I would have done, but he was
Putting his boots on.
Well, you've got to laugh, haven't you? You just run that past me again.
Regarded by many as the best film ever made, Citizen Kane on BBC 2 shortly. Here on BBC One, Michael Caine stars in The Italian Job in 5 minutes after A Christmas Story. Regarded by many as the best film ever made, Citizen Kane on BBC 2 shortly. Here on BBC One, Michael Caine stars in The Italian Job in 5 minutes after A Christmas Story.
I'm waiting for my son to come again. That's why I've got this chair, so I can see through the, what do you call it? The thing you see through. He's a lovely boy. Mind you, he just didn't pop out. £8 2 ounces he was. Gave me all Jiminy, I can tell you. Oh. Just cheese. No, it's turkey. Again. Or is it cheese? I'm going dotty. I really am. So anyway, we've been traipsing across Israel for how long? Too long, I know that. 9 months with a great big baby inside me. And can we find a B&B? Not blooming likely. And I'm 15 years of age. I'm a little girl. I don't even know what's what, if you know what I mean. And my waters are broken all down my frock, and everybody's being so nasty, real nasty. And I'm inside this old shed, and I'm lying in the straw and the animal muck, and I'm blotting my socks off, and there's flies like there's no tomorrow. He's covered in blood, and there's nowhere to wash him, and I'm a going on a bit. I do that, you know. Talk the hind legs off a donkey, me. And oh, there was one of them there too, and an ox, and a sheep, and crowds of people, and all gawping. But that didn't bother him, it never did. He just opened his eyes, my little son, and it was just lovely. I said to the angel, I'm really blessed, aren't I? He said, you are. I said, I know. Mind you, they're all like that, aren't they, when they dress like ninepence in their swaddling clothes. Little beggars. They don't let on they're going to break your heart, do they? Oh, it's cold. Tea's cold, love. Donkeys, eh? She had a laugh like one, that woman. Mary was her face. All lipstick and cheap shoes. Well, she was from Magdala, and you know what they say. This would be years later. He was a man by then, and didn't she know it? Talk of the town he was in those days, and he was pulling in the crowds. We couldn't get anywhere near him, but she was right down the front with a donkey laugh, and he looks at her with those soft eyes of his, and all of a sudden she stops laughing, and she's got this little tear trickling down. I'm not having that. I didn't want to say anything to him, though. Well, you don't want your mother fussing round you, do you? But some nosy Parker poked her nose in and said, your mother's here. And you know what he said? And I'll never forget this. He said, who is my mother? I only have one family. And he pointed to all his fair weather friends and said, this is my family. And then he walked right past me. Sounds a bit nasty now, doesn't it? But I knew what he meant. It was going to be very difficult for him, because he'd got such a lot to do. Oh, just what the doctor ordered. I'll leave this till he cools down. I'm glad I went to the crucifixion. It wasn't very nice, my little baby up there on that thing. But you have to say to yourself, I'm not here for me, I'm here for him. He's tried his best, he's done what he had to do, and now this is all there is. They'd all gone by that time, of course, all the fair weathers. But I'll tell you who was there, her, with the lipstick and shoes. I lent her my hanky. I never did get it back. See, I didn't want to say anything to him. Well, you don't want your mother fussing around you, do you? Not when you know. But he saw me. He hadn't clapped eyes on me for a long time, but he knew me straight away. He said, woman, behold your son. I'd got him back, do you see? My son. Is this cheese? And then he died. Then I saw him the following Monday and the Tuesday after that. And now I'm waiting for him to come again. That's why I've got this chair, so I can see through the, the thing you see through. I won't go up yet. I wouldn't want him to come all this way and not be able to find me.